Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think we may start. I would like to thank you all for being here. We shall be talking about the Hallmarking Convention, the Vienna Convention as it is known, which is a convention promoting the export in the member countries, granting at the same time the trustworthiness of the products being exported in the eyes of the final consumers. Indeed, all gold products that bear this hallmarking can be trusted as being in line with the convention. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Gianluca Pozza. I'm the head of the Vicenza Assay office. It is part of the Chamber of Commerce of Vicenza. This office has been singled out as one of the 3 assay offices that are authorized in our country to hallmark based on the conditions as in the convention. Our assay office is a traditional assay office that has been set up in '65. It was the first in Italy, and we trust this new service enormously. Scott Walter is our guest. He is the president of the Hallmarking Convention. We're extremely happy to have him as our guest. He shall be talking about the convention, its methods, and what are the advantages it grants to companies who may rely on the services being offered by the convention. Mr. Scott Walter started off as a goldsmith, and over the past 28 years he's been the CEO and assay master of the Edinburgh Assay Office, the largest assay office in the UK. Indeed, one of the most important assay offices of the convention in terms of number of tests and hallmarking being processed. The Edinburgh Assay Office may boast quite a long-standing tradition. Indeed, it is over 600 years old. And it has been carrying out a test on precious metals objects for as long, and is also the chairman of the Vienna Convention, or the Hallmarking Convention, also known as a Convention on Precious Metals. So whenever you hear different phrases, they all refer to the same institution. This is something that you should bear in mind, the objective of which is, again, promoting the export among the different member countries of precious metal objects. It includes as many as 22 member countries, nearly all in Europe, but as we're going to hear, it also includes Israel. Mr. Scott Walter is part of the technical committee and is also a member of the British Market Council, providing the technical knowledge in disseminating information to the UK Ministry for all what concerns the legislation on precious metals and precious metals themselves. Over the past 4 or 5 years, actually, Mrs. Scott Walter has also been the international president of the Assay Office. Having said as much, I think I would like to given the floor. We know that he can talk with different hats. We have learned about his expertise on the subject, on whatever concerns the hallmarking of precious metals. And we are more than pleased to have him as our guest, to learn from him some of his insight. I think that he is indeed the best fitted speaker to whom to address our questions, if any should come up on the subject. If you ask me why did we invite Scott here, well, on Thursday and Friday, we had the honor to play host in the Vicenza, on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce of Vicenza, the proceedings of the Standing Committee of the Hallmarking Convention. And this has been indeed the first time Italy played host to that meeting. It has been indeed quite an honor to play host to this meeting, and we hosted up 60 people coming from different countries, both member countries and observing countries, who discussed for the whole day all subjects connected to the coordination of hallmarking activities. One of the important issues that was tackled during this meeting is connected to the hallmarking for the online shopping. Indeed, there are many e-commerce platforms hosting also precious objects, and at this point in time there is no clear definition on the legislation on such products that are marketed online, and on the risk in terms of health safety also of the people that are connected to that. Now, having said as much, I'd like to repeat that Italy has been the first time to host this convention, because Italy just joined the convention last year, and we're very pleased we have reached this objective involving all of the chambers of commerce in the country. Now we can have this hallmarking in Italy to export our products in the 22 countries that you see here highlighted in yellow. Up until yesterday, we could only import in Romania and another country, so there were just 2 countries. But now from 2, we shifted to 23 countries indeed. So in Italy, we can resort to the hallmarking and the export toward as many as 23 countries. You have a list of the Assay office. One is the one of Vicenza, again, as I said. The second is the Hallmarks Laboratory in Alessandria Nasti, connection of Alessandria Nasti Chamber of Commerce in Vicenza, and the third is in Arezzo in Tuscany. I'm sorry for taking so long to introduce the subject matter of this meeting and to highlight the what it means for our country. Now I'd like to give him the floor immediately, and thank you, Scott, for being here with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Gianluca, and thank you to all of your colleagues at the Chamber of Commerce for hosting the convention here. As you said, Italy has now signed the treaty and is now a fully fledged member of the convention. And this, for me, is a fantastic opportunity for Italian manufacturers and a great honor for the convention to welcome Italy to that family as the convention ultimately aims to expand and include as many countries as possible, because our objective is to facilitate the movement of precious metal items without any barriers. So having such a world-famous jewelry manufacturing country and Europe's leading design and jewelry manufacturing join the convention is a fantastic step forward, which has taken some 10 years. So we're very pleased. I am Scott Walter. I am the chairman of the convention, so I chair the standing committee, but I also, in the daytime, I run an Assay office, and we hallmark somewhere in the region of between 10 and 20,000 units per day. And we also apply a great number of convention marks for goods that are being exported from the UK. So the convention for the UK is a very important vehicle because we are no longer a member of the EU, sadly, and that means that we rely on the convention mark for our goods to travel to other countries. There are, of course, some mutual recognition systems that exist outside the convention, but those are by no means clear, and they're by no means certain, because they rely on domestic legislation and some subjective processes which can often hold goods up at the border. The advantage that the convention has is that it's a treaty between governments, and it's not an agreement between customs, it's not an agreement between Assay offices. It is a treaty which is signed at government level, so it has government backing. So what is the convention? As I explained, the convention is for the control of precious metal articles. It's an international treaty between governments. So each government that signs the treaty ratifies it through its own domestic parliament and builds it into its law. So it's very certain. So if you have a government that's accepted the convention, if the CCM mark, the common control mark, is applied to goods, they can move freely onto the market in another signatory country state without any friction whatsoever. It was signed first in Vienna, which is why it has its name, the Vienna Convention, in 1972. And it entered into force in 1975. So it's quite an old convention, but it started off with just 7 members. And it was quite a brave endeavor, actually, because at that time, every country had its own hallmarking system. Some countries had no hallmarking system. There was no way to move goods between countries. They would have to be hallmarked again, even if they had been hallmarked already. And this was really difficult for people that wanted to sell their goods across Europe, across the world. So some crazy Assay offices and governments had this idea that they could build a system whereby they would recognize one another's marks, provided they could agree the technical detail, because each system was different. And that's how the convention came about. From that 7 members, we now have 22 contracting states. And we've moved outside of Europe. We have Israel, who's joined. We have other observing countries from outside of the EU. As chairman, I still see gaps in Europe. We don't have Spain. We don't have France. But thankfully, we now have Italy. And we know that the Italians joining the convention has made the Spanish look and think, oh, we should look at joining. And for the first time, we have, for the first time in a long time, we have the French looking again to say, oh, should we be part of this? We also presented to the EU Commission last year, because outside of the convention, there are some mutual recognition mechanisms, but they're not very good, and they don't always work. And the Commission, the EU Commission, regularly get complaints from different sectors saying, why can't I move my goods? So for the first time, the EU actually asked us to present to see how the convention worked, because it's certain and it works on agreed technical rules. So that's the real value of the convention. So we aim to facilitate cross-border trade, and we aim to remove the technical barriers. So when we see other less well-defined EU-based mutual recognition systems, they often leave room for doubt. So in one country, they might allow a surface plating. In another country, they don't. Manufacturers are trying to import, and they're being stopped and told, no, this is not right, you can't do this. The good thing about the convention is it is a harmonized set of rules. And the reason that we met in Italy on Wednesday, Thursday? It was Thursday, yeah. The reason we met this week in Italy for the Standing Committee was that each country comes along and we look at the technical details and we agree them, and those are well documented. And that means that the Assay office can advise manufacturers on what's acceptable for the convention. It might be different from your domestic rules, but at least manufacturers have certainty about what is required, and they can build their products, they can meet the standards, and then once they've met those standards, they can export. The standards aren't difficult, they're not complicated, they're nice and simple, and in most cases, they mirror the standards and the practices which occur in most countries. But they're very certain, and when that common control mark is applied, it's accepted, because we know that it's been tested to the same standards, it's been marked in the correct way, and it's been screened for any platings or other materials that might not be permitted. The other big advantage of the convention is that it's not static. So it's not a single set of rules that doesn't ever change. So we evolve the technical rules as the industry evolves. And each member can come to the meeting and say, our manufacturers are starting to use this technique. Is this okay? Other members can see that. They can say, yeah, we're happy with that. It then gets built into the rules, and that way the rules can change. We see that particularly with the Swiss watch industry. So for the Swiss, the watch industry is the most important part of their industry. And the technical evolution in the area of watch manufacture is very fast, and it's very clever, and it does things which nobody thought about before. So ceramic golds and things that other parts of the industry don't do. So for the Swiss, it's very important for them to be a member of the Standing Committee, so they can come along with a new development and inform the rest of the Standing Committee. It can be agreed that it's acceptable, and then the Swiss can apply the convention mark, and those products can go wherever they want to go. There's no need for another Assay office to look at it again, or test it, or question it. It can move freely. For the Swiss, that's a very important part of their watch industry, to be able to move their products around. So this can work very well. There's a saying in the UK, which is you have to be in it to win it. So the convention is about taking part, and if you want the convention to work, you have to engage with the process. And Gianluca has already requested to join our technical committee, our standing technical group, so that he can learn more about the technical rules, but also bring things from the Italian industry that he would like to see developed. So it's not just about following the rules, it's about being part of the convention and then moving those rules forward so the industry can continue to innovate without the fear of the products not being accepted. So the harmonized technical requirements are something which can run alongside your domestic rules. So the great thing about the convention is you can have national rules, you can have a voluntary system, not a mandatory system. But when you apply the CCM mark, it means that you've brought the rule book out, you've had a look and made sure that it complies, so it's accepted in every other country. So we meet twice a year, and those meetings are usually attended by the Assay offices that are authorized by their governments, and also the governments themselves. So each signatory state sends someone from their ministry. So at those meetings, the ministry can make decisions on behalf of their government and can vote on issues. So it's not just Assay offices making up rules to make life difficult for the industry, it's ministries, and ministries have a responsibility to ensure that their regulations are proportionate for the industry. So they're not just there to support the Assay offices, they're also there to make sure that their industries are being regulated in a proportionate fashion and making sure that rules are not too stringent. You can imagine if it was just Assay offices meeting, they might disappear down a technical rabbit hole and make things very difficult for the industry. But there's always the government there to ensure that the interests of the industry are also represented. We have technical working groups, so when things get very technical and there's a difficult issue to resolve, we can send it to a working group of experts who can look at it in detail and come back with recommendations. So we have some of the brightest and most experienced analytical chemists and experts on those groups who can really dive down into the detail and come back and inform the governments that attend in a simple way so that they'll understand. And that's the value of having these sub-office groups. So within the convention itself, we define words. So we make sure that there's a glossary of terms so that if we're talking about a subject, everybody understands what we're talking about, so we have common definitions. We have common technical requirements, from how we test something to what we allow in terms of plating, what we allow in terms of working parts, so steel parts, how we define items that are made of precious metal and non-precious metal, how they're marked. We also look at tolerances, standards of fineness, so there's a whole list of standard of fineness. The great rule about the convention is that you can apply a standard of fineness that's common in your country, but no country is required to accept that fineness if it's not legal in their country. So there's also a list of the countries and the finenesses that they accept. That's very clear. Use of solder is another area, because some countries allow lower standards of solder, so it allows us to agree that, and that's very clear for manufacturers. Working parts like metal parts, multi-metal articles. Coatings is another area which is really important, because the technology of coatings and platings are becoming more and more complex. So often the convention is used as a way of educating countries about new manufacturing methods, because if they see them, they might mistakenly test them and believe that they are one thing when they're not. So informing everybody about platings and specifying what they are. At the moment, we're looking to review our whole process around how we allow and what we don't allow. The addition of vapor deposition platings and coatings mean that the convention will adopt new rules to ensure that manufacturers can be dynamic, flexible, and creative about the way they produce products. So the convention is a system that allows marks to be traced. So when a mark comes onto your market from another country, you can see who applied the mark in terms of the office. So if I saw an Italian convention mark, I would have a look at the mark. I can see that it was marked by the Vicenza Assay office. I can contact the Vicenza Assay office directly, and I can ensure that that mark is genuine. I can let them look at it if I've got any doubts about that. I would never test it again. There's no requirement for me to test it. I would always go back to the Assay office that applied it, and they would confirm, yes, that is our mark, yet that is a customer that's registered here, and that would be how it would work. That's not necessarily how it works outside of the convention, because being able to find out who applied the mark and to recognize the mark is very difficult. There are lots and lots of marks internationally. But if I see a CCM mark, the Common Control mark, the convention mark, I know I can contact any of the Assay offices. I know I can trace that back, or they can trace that, tell me who the supplier was. So we have the Assay office mark, we have the precious metal mark, and we have the CCM mark that tells me that it's been marked and tested under the rules of the convention. So the convention mark has changed quite a bit. We have an older mark, which was called the Type 1 CCM, and this is still in use. And you can see the first symbol is the manufacturer's mark, so that tells you who put the goods onto the market. The second one is the fineness. The third one is the CCM with the fineness, and the final one is the Assay office. It tells you where it was tested. So with the Type 1 mark, we have a different shape for every fineness. With the new Type 2 CCM, this can be applied alongside the national mark, and as long as the national mark has an indication of what the fineness is and an indication of what the metal is, then this mark can be applied in addition. This has become very important because the space on jewelry has become very limited. So the mark must fit, and there are some really delicate pieces around. So getting a mark that will work on those smaller items is the real challenge. So the Type 2 CCM mark has been developed for that reason. The Type 2 CCM mark is the mark that will be used exclusively in Italy. The Italian Assay offices have adopted this marking method as they have no desire to go backwards and use the old mark. Some countries who've been around in the convention since 1975 are still using the Type 2 mark. But Italy will use the Type 1 mark. So it's a small mark, and it's quite flexible. It can fit on even the finest jewelry. So the Type 1, you can see there's a different shape for every metal. And that way, it contains all of the information that any country might require. The Type 2 is always the same mark, regardless of the metal, regardless of the fineness. But you must have accompanied a mark that tells you what the material is and what the fineness is. And when the Type 2 CCM is applied, the millesimal fineness must also be applied. So we already heard that the convention is expanding. We have 22 contracting states, of which 17 are EU member states. Those are Austria, Croatia, Cyprus, the Czech Republic, Denmark, Finland, Hungary, Ireland, Israel, Latvia, Lithuania, the Netherlands, Norway, Poland, Portugal, the Slovak Republic, Slovenia, Sweden, Switzerland, Serbia, and the UK. So in terms of applying marks, the big appliers of marks are the UK, who apply around 2 million marks a year, convention marks. The Swiss apply about the same. Very important for their watch manufacturing industry. The Dutch, the Netherlands are beginning to grow quite significantly, and they use the mark to supply to a lot of big brands that want to distribute all the way across Europe. We're starting to see a slight increase in the Irish mark as well. Most of the other countries apply very few marks for export, and some of those countries apply no marks. But that's not the reason for the convention. It's not a hallmarking. It's often called a hallmarking convention. But it's not all about hallmarking. It's about accepting. It's about recognizing. It's about harmonizing. So it's entirely up to each country whether they want to be a hallmarking country or they want to be a receiving country. And for most of those countries, it's about knowing when the product comes onto their market that they don't have to check it, and it can go straight to consumers. So I think Italy has a manufacturing heritage in precious metals. It's renowned throughout Europe for its design. And I think that there's a great opportunity for Italian manufacturers to supply product directly from Italy. And I think that's especially as important as we start to look at the retail landscape changing, because brick and mortar retail, that's shops, are important still for jewellery purchases, but we've seen a huge growth in online retailing. So for brands and manufacturers to be able to supply product from a central location using different web pages in local languages and being able to centrally distribute from Italy is a great opportunity, and not having to use an overseas assay office or a warehouse where they can hold that stock. So it allows manufacturers to apply convention marks to their product in Italy, hold them here in Italy, and then supply as they're sold to different countries, direct to consumers. And we're seeing much, much more direct to consumer sales via online retail platforms. Some of that is unregulated, and we have a problem with that. But we think it's a huge problem for both legitimate manufacturers and for assay offices. So we understand that it's important for manufacturers to push the importance of hallmarking and to differentiate themselves from product that's being sold online that is not hallmarked or is not checked. We've been testing product online and making purchases. The Dutch recently looked at online retail on the whole and made test purchases and tested, and they found 40 to 60% of the product was substandard or was not what it was described to be. So legitimate retailers and assay offices have a job to do together to promote the importance of genuine product to consumers. And we think the convention mark is a great opportunity for Italian manufacturers to do that. So consumers, we've done some research with consumers. We do a lot of product online for online retailers, and we asked 1,000 online jewellery shoppers whether hallmarking was important. And the reply was not great. Many of them didn't know what it was. But then when we asked the second question, we explained what hallmarking was. And once they knew what it was, 98% said it was important. And 98% said they would look for it in the future. So making sure that consumers know the difference and why hallmarking is important is a really important battle against product which is fake. And the people that have the biggest conversations and the most conversations with consumers are manufacturers and retailers. So that's where the responsibility lies. We can provide the information and we can provide the importance of hallmarking, but those conversations should take place with consumers. At the moment, we also have applying states in Ukraine and Sri Lanka who want to join. As I say, we have quite a number of observers, and we recently had interest from France and also from Spain, who've been attending regularly and trying to persuade their manufacturers to support joining the convention. And I believe they're now at a stage where they have that. They need to move to convince their government to sign. The convention is attended by, as I said, by countries the world over. We've had China, Japan, Estonia, France, Germany, Macedonia, Mauritius, Moldova, Mongolia, Montenegro, Romania, Russia, Singapore, Spain, Thailand, and the United Arab Emirates all attend to find out more about the convention. We've built a model law which we allow anyone to download. If they don't have their own hallmarking law, they can develop one. So we are in the business of trying to open borders and overcome barriers so that industry can distribute precious metal products without barriers. And the more countries we have that join, the closer we get to that. So the main benefits are we have clear rules, consistent application of those rules. Doesn't matter which country you're in, they're applied the same way. No technical obstacles when you're importing or exporting. No costly remarking in the country that you're in. No damaged articles, so you send something to another country and it gets tested and damaged, and then the importer is unhappy, your product's damaged. And of course, we have a level playing field, which means every manufacturer is working to the same standards. And we have an additional control against counterfeiting because we can tell whether a mark is genuine or not. If there's a counterfeit mark that ends up on the market, we can identify it. So it's a good anti-counterfeiting measure as well. We're still expanding, and I talked about our work to expand the convention. So in summary, there are currently 22 countries that are members. We have 2 applicants and around another 20 technical participants or observers. It's a treaty between governments, so you know that it's backed by the government in that country, which means it's going to be backed by their enforcement, it'll be backed by their border control, so you'll have no frictions. It's recognized internationally, and it provides a solid, no argument system for mutual recognition. There's no gray area, it's accepted, and no one's going to check it again. The convention has a well-evolved, practical, and dynamic, harmonized set of technical rules. So the rules will keep on changing. Whatever industry needs, we will adapt our testing methods, and we will support the industry in ensuring that their goods can be described and hallmarked. That ends my presentation. Hopefully, I've been able to convince you that the convention is a worthwhile vehicle for export, and that Italy's joining the convention. It has been a really important step forward in expanding the convention. Thank you.
Grazie mille, Scott.
Thank you very much, Scott, for your wonderful presentation and for being here with us today. Any questions? Any curiosity? Any clarifications you may need? Please use the microphone so that simultaneous translation can be provided.
Thank you. My name is Stefan. I'm from Holland, and I would like to ask, what are the costs for the hallmarking? Have you any idea what it costs for the jeweler?
I think costs are unique to each Assay office, but I think in most cases it does depend on volume. Because Assay offices do adapt their prices. And if you're sending one item, the item has to be tested. And the test is the big cost. Hallmarking is a fairly minor cost. So the most efficient prices are gained when you're sending several items. So more than 25 items will be cheaper than a single item. I know in the UK, there's a minimum charge of around £15, so around 15 euros. But when you get down to higher numbers and you cover the cost of the test, then the unit charge can be as low as €1. So it's a fairly small cost.
For the value of gold now?
Yes. It's an insignificant cost, yeah.
Is it possible to hallmark the goods? For example, Italy has its own system, which is only the hallmark 750 or 585 and the maker's sign. Is it possible to re-hallmark that good?
Yeah, of course. I'll let, in the UK it is. I should let Italy answer that.
Allora,
Well, re-hallmarking, the 750 mark, well, I believe that this is related to the fact that we have a rhomboid diamond, which is only an Italian mark. But regarding imports to Italy, it is not possible to change the hallmark that has already been marked. So if we receive the product from abroad with the hallmarking stamped by a foreign assay office, we recognize that, but it cannot be changed. Conversely, if a product comes without a hallmarking by another assay office of a country that has contracted the hallmarking convention, we have to import it, unless it's a country of the European Union where we have the mutual recognition of identification marks. But in all other cases, it is necessary to mark the item with the importer's mark and with the Italian mark. So it depends on whether the country it comes from is part of the convention, in which case you cannot change the hallmark, but in all the other cases, most likely the mark has to be modified and changed. I'm sorry, Gianluca.
Sorry.
Can you repeat it in English, because I didn't get the headphones for simultaneous translation?
Sorry, I should clarify. Sorry, can I ask again? So what problem are you trying to solve? Do you have goods in Holland that you want to bring to Italy, or Italian goods?
In Holland, it's not a problem. If I have a piece of Italian, even if I have a piece from UK, we have to remark it.
Okay.
In Holland, that's not a problem, and we can choose. We can say, okay, we want the convention, or we want the Dutch.
Yeah.
That's what we do. But I was in Italy, if it's possible, you have an old bracelet, 750, and you want to have the new conventions hallmarking in it. Is that possible?
Yes, of course it is, yes. Sorry, we overcomplicated that, sorry.
Yes. Okay. As for the tariff, lo dico in italiano.
So tariffs in Italy do not depend on the 3 Assay offices, but have one single national fee that ranges between 1 and 4 euros, depending on the volume and the type of customer.
For all the Assay office, and we go from about 4 euros pieces to 1 euros, depending on the numerosity of the batch of the lot.
My name is Bellini, Maestriografi Valenza. I have a question. Is there the possibility of opening hallmarking to North American countries? Is there this opportunity? Any interest on their side? So could we open up the convention to North America as well? Thank you.
Very good question. The North America has federal law on gold, silver, and platinum, but it doesn't have any mandatory hallmarking. So manufacturers can declare and put it onto the market without any checks. I've got to be very careful about what I say. I don't want to insult North America in any way, but the market, the Jewelry Vigilance Committee in America did some test purchases of product that was on the market, and they found that the undercarroting was fairly significant. So a lot of product was much less, had much less gold in it than was advertised. And that's because there was no checks. So in order for North America to have joined the convention, they would have to have a voluntary system where manufacturers could send to an Assay office and have the convention mark, and they would be free to come and join. But I don't think the North American industry at this stage is looking to have hallmarking. I often hear from US consumers, that's people that buying in shops in America, they say, oh, why can't we have hallmarking in America? We love hallmarking. And hallmarking would give us all the comfort that we were getting, what we were paying for. But I don't see the industry lining up to start hallmarking. I would like to see hallmarking in America. We've never had anyone from North America, from the government in America, come to the convention to observe. We have had the Canadians, but we've never had anyone from the United States.
And talking about Europe, United States, and Canada, I mean, is hallmarking recognized?
I think in North America, the federal law says there must be a manufacturer's stamp so that it can be traced, and the fineness, the gold content must be stated. So if a hallmark is applied by an Assay office under the convention, it has those elements. So yeah, it's not, but nobody's checking. And I don't think anyone's in America is going to have a look at shops and see if things are hallmarks. I just don't think they're checking. But yes, a hallmark meets the requirements of the US federal bill. But I don't think anyone's checking. Obviously, they have a minimum gold fineness of 10 carat. That might be the only challenge. If something is 9 carat, it's less than the minimum standard in the States.
C'è qualche altra domanda?
Any other questions? A curiosity. Why did it take 16 years to Italy to manage to become a member of the convention? I have been a member of the committee, and I have to say 16 years is a very long time.
It did take a very long time, and I'm not sure I can tell you why. I think under normal circumstances, it does take in the region of 10 years, because the usual delay is at the government end, because the legislation, first of all, the government has to attend and satisfy itself that it wants to join, then the legislation needs to be adjusted, and then the Assay offices, if they're not already there, have to be set up, and then the inspection committee will go from the convention and say, yes, the Assay officers are okay. And then the government must commit to signing the treaty. And then all of the other members must say, yes, we're happy for that country to join. In the case of Italy, there were a couple of countries that weren't keen for Italy to join. And I was not chairman then, but I remember the situation. There was a weakness in the treaty, which meant that it was very difficult for us to move forward if a country said no. But we did eventually get past that. And since then, we have been working on new rules within the treaty to prevent that from ever happening again. But at that time, the treaty had been unchanged since 1975, and no one had ever blocked another country. So we didn't have a mechanism for overcoming that. We did eventually overcome it, and I'm pleased to say it was under my chairmanship that Italy finally joined, and I was a supporter of Italy joining from the beginning. And most countries were, but there was one country that were very difficult about Italy joining, but we overcame that and we moved forward, and we're really pleased to have Italy here now. So it took a long time, but it just made it all the sweeter when we finally are here in Italy hosting a meeting with Italy as a member. So yeah, very positive about that. But yeah, it took a long time.
Bene, se non ci sono altre domande.
Very well, if there are no other questions, thank you very much also for your wonderful words, for your help, your support, and your kindness and availability. Thank you, Scott, and thank you very much to the whole convention. This has been demonstrated throughout the past years, and especially in these last months. We have really felt your support, and we're very grateful. Also, thank you very much for being here today. Thank you very much to our audience for being here with us today, and we wish you all a wonderful day. Thank you.